Welcome everyone to today's session. It's actually titled The Next UPI, sort of open digital infrastructure for credit democratization. And I think everyone here sort of is here because they feel or sense that excitement of something powerful that's kind of being built and is in the process of being built and implemented. So when we thought about who could sort of give the first overview of what's actually getting built and how do we explain it in simple terms, because it's actually quite powerful innovation that's happening, but it's quite deeply thought through, and it's very it's sort of in some ways counterintuitive, because we're not building products, we're building actually platforms, and we're building infrastructure across many different sort of entities. So when we thought about who could give that first introduction, the first name that sort of came to mind was Dr. Pramod Verma, who's sort of a craftsman of building national scale digital infrastructure. And he, ever since he joined the Aadhaar team in 2009 as the chief technology officer of UIDAI, which is, as you all know, is like the fastest platform in the world to reach 1 billion users, to scale up. He's been working on a number of sort of national digital projects, including DigiLocker, eSign, UPI, GSTN, and many others. So he's going to give a brief overview before we begin. Apologize, I know we're all excited to talk to each other, but I think it'll be helpful to have that to frame the conversation.
Thank you everyone for having me. We are going to be talking today specifically regarding next generation digital infrastructure, open digital infrastructure for credit democratization. And democratizing credit, it has been a holy grail in one sense, and as part of the financial inclusion drive, but something which we have successfully arrived at. I think we started from identity earlier, digital signature, and then of course UPI, as many of you know. So we have pieces of the puzzle in the financial stack, FinStack of sort. But it did not include the full credit democratization elements of it. And today we'll specifically talk about that, where India is going with it and how it's going to dramatically change the way micro credits are given to millions of people. So if you really look at the MSME, the demand versus what's the met demand, it's quite terrible in one sense that it is a very low percentage. It's as good as our financial inclusion percentage. In 2009, Indian only 17% of India banked, but we changed that. In the last 10 years, we have 85+% banking, participating in at least the core part of the financial inclusion. But still, on the credit side, we still have a very low percentage of our MSME actually getting the credit. It's primarily because of, while it looks like many reasons, if you unbundle them, you realize that it is primarily due to cost of servicing and cost of trust, which is the data, and that MSME's ability for the lender to evaluate an MSME and provide a low ticket, low tenure lending options or offers is almost impossible for today to do because of the prevailing cost. And it means that we have few people getting large ticket loans, and then lot of discretionary decisions left to the people who are actually giving. And none of that actually scales. None of that scales for millions of MSME. And the real three challenges that actually prevent today from financial institutions, large banks or financial institutions from giving credit to really small business, it's in terms of discovery of people. That means ability for the financial institutions to reach these millions of SMEs. They are not large enterprises. They are not large people with large assets. They're really tiny onesie, twosie, small MSME and networks, but millions of them, right? From across manufacturing, agri, retail, hospitality. I mean, you take anything. India is actually very large percentage still done through them. But reaching them, is a very costly affair and almost impossible for a large lender to do. Second, lack of credible data uh, about them and about their financial behavior, financial status, their credentials, the rest of the credentials that they are, who they are, is almost impossible to get at. And even if they get to some paperwork, it's almost impossible to verify the authenticity of such data or such claims. And eventually, after all that thing, you are still dealing with, cash disbursement, cash collection, follow-ups. And if you put together overall cost of doing this today, cost of reaching millions, cost of trusting the data, and cost of actually processing, it's impossible to provide low ticket, low tenure, high volume lending offers today at all. The system is just not catered to. And that's been a challenge, right? This challenge is, it's really sad that millions of MSMEs don't get to, while the government wants to do, lenders want to do, and the fundamental architecture is not amenable for getting to millions of them, and it just needs to be solved. And that precisely is also coming from a very interesting possibility. Interesting possibilities that you can, the gig economy of sort, or the network aggregators economy has opened up the possibility that many of these SMEs are aggregated by large platforms, large network platforms of various sorts, retail, kirana networks, and food delivery networks, and medical hospital chains, or the large small clinic chains, and so on. Many companies actually aggregating mobility across all domains actually. So it's an interesting possibility that these networks are actually used as non-service provider to get to the thing. So you are creating a mechanism by which you're creating a distribution network of sorts. Okay? And then this pre-existing relationship with MSME by the network provider allows two things. It allows unique data that can come through and unique possibility of intercepting the cash flows, right? Cash flows of them. That means a small hotel chain or a small restaurant chain aggregated by a food delivery network has an ongoing relationship, and that relationship allows not only reach, it also allows trustworthy data. It allows trustworthy ongoing flow of payments that can be intercepted to collect. And that's precisely the reason why that LSPs can play a very credible network operator in the middle to actually solve the lending problem, right? And this is also perfect timing, given the fact that large-scale network aggregation is going across the domains, agri-techs and e-commerce and various health techs and edu techs and kirana techs and so on. And it's very, very large-scale and networks are being formed. And so this shifts the part of the first puzzle, right? That allows the discovery part of it and discovery and subsequent engagement part of it to be unbundled into, from the lender perspective, to instead of directly going to millions of MSME, these networks act as a mechanism. But you still don't solve the other two. The other two are credible data and a common way of integrating and interoperating across this network. If every lender has to integrate on the left to every network in a custom way, or vice versa, if every network, a food network aggregator or a mobility aggregator has to integrate with every bank and lender in a very custom way, it's just simply not scalable. So there are two parts that still need to be solved. One is a common interoperable language or a protocol by which this can be done. Second, a credible set of data and electronic processes that dramatically reduce the cost of paperwork and cost of processing. And that's precisely what we are looking at. India definitely is setting itself up for a new architecture, a new way of bringing together highly fragmented MSME market in a very, very organized way into a structured, scalable, and very, very data-driven, effective way to give small ticket, high volume, low tenure lending offers. And that's something which, if you can crack at scale, it would be a wonderful thing to dramatically transition the way MSMEs get credit. And that is where the three layers come in. The lenders who are the source of money, and they take the decisions of lending, but with the help of LSP, loan service provider, who are these network operators of sort, various platforms, various networks that have large MSME behind them. They're using their data, using their workflows, using their cash flow workflows. You are able to interact with them, discover them, trust the data, disperse and collect back in an open, interoperable way. And if we can solve that balance, that will be very powerful. And that's the reason why the three technologies, and a couple of them we have been introduced to earlier probably, like UPI. Of course, if you don't know UPI in India, probably living under the rock. But what is new though, is the layered interoperable rail called OCEN or OCEN, also Open Credit Enablement Network, that allows a shared protocol for connecting the lender to the LSPs, and also connecting them subsequently with the data flow, which is account aggregator for financial data, and various other data that will come through our data empowerment architecture, and connecting to payment rails, which is like UPI for both disbursement and actual for collection through e-mandate. So you're able to actually do automated, paperless processing of data, trustworthy data access, trustworthy payment rails. On top of that, you have a common protocol for interacting between lender and LSP, making their integration, cost of integration plummeted, dramatically lower. Do it once, you have access to all lender. Or from the lender's perspective, do it once, you have access to all the network. Now it's only an innovation of products that is required on top of that. And that rail, OCEN rail in between, is the common language or a common way of doing, or a common set of protocols and open APIs that allow the lender to connect to the LSPs across various domains. LSPs in turn, of course, have aggregated the MSMEs. And that network unbundling was the last piece of the puzzle that is closing out the credit holy grail. And account aggregator being probably you're introduced to it, that where India is, as part of the data empowerment, is opening up individual and SME business data in a consented way to be able to share from the data source to the data consumer, so the data provider to the data consumer, with full control of the individual or the SME in the middle who owns the data in terms of consent, purpose, why, when, what kind of data you share. This architecture is applied to in the financial domain through account aggregator network. And you should read up and understand how the whole system works. And this is providing in one of the underpinning Lego blocks for the credit to happen, which is trustworthy data. Data flow, all the data related to SMEs that is coming through an account aggregator. And of course, UPI e-mandate is something which you have heard and seen. It allows UPI to do recurring collections and recurring still consented and authorized, revocable, of course, consent. And depending on the rule of the game, it can be applied into the flow of cash by the LSPs. So when LSPs are getting cash from the SMEs, they can actually intercept and actually pay back, or actually can be independently mandated that actually get used by the lender to pull the money. And so there's a significant difference, right? When you look at the old way of lending, a collateral-based, asset-based lending to data-driven and ability to actually track future cash flow, and also interestingly watch the end use of that money that is being given through a standing consent, the consent that allows the lender to view the data or your banking transactions, for example, during that tenure. From a high ticket size loans, for few people, few Indians get high ticket, long tenure loans, to a sachet size, short tenure and low, money, what do you call it, low ticket ticket size, but in millions, not in few. From a time-consuming physical paper process to a highly digital, paperless, fully trustable. In fact, more trust than the paper can give you, because the digital signature, entire data flow through account aggregator and consents through a UPI and the OCEN protocol are all using digital signature and cryptographic techniques to ensure that it is non-repudiable and trustworthy data, dramatically reducing the ability for reducing the cost of processing and increasing the trust levels, right? And then sort of lend and forget model, where you give large, a large sachet size loan to 15-year or 20-year based on asset, and then sort of forget it and you sit back and collect the interest sort of model, to lend, monitor, collect, and lend again every week, daily, weekly, monthly. So that ability for shorter micro lending and micro cycles is precisely what we need. But to do that, we need to dramatically reduce the cost of trust and cost of processing, which is what we are doing through OCEN, account aggregator, UPI, and of course the underlying India stack, which is the digital way to verify Aadhaar, digital way to verify PAN, digital way to digitally sign contracts through e-sign, and so on. Okay, so if you put together the collective power, combinatorial power of that is dramatic. And some of the examples, these are just examples of how you can imagine the micro credit cycle will kick in. Is of course, you can use GST is a very powerful way for the taxpayer to say, here is my taxpayer data, and on my taxpayer data, my verified taxpayer data, can you offer me a short tenure, maybe just to cover a few days before the MSME is there on, so, buyers pay them back. Or GEM, government GEM marketplace is a brilliant playground for large scale SMEs to be able to sell it to government. And if GEM as an LSP can act as the mechanism to provide the data and to intercept the payment for repayment, it's almost completely paperless, trustworthy. Micro credits can be offered to GEM suppliers behind the scene. Millions of SMEs who are on GEM. Or similarly on an agri-tech or a Kirana aggregator. These products can be imagined quite easily once you understand the building blocks. But these have to be imagined by the lender, by the market, but it's not how you do today. These products have to be reimagined and recreated for a very different, paperless, near instant, low tenure, low ticket, but extremely high volume lending capabilities. And then you use that micro loop to create further trust and further rating and scoring of these SMEs, so that they get better and better offers as they behave better in the system. So the entire Open APIs, the iSpirit team has been working for a couple of years actually to bring this in, and they're all on GitHub, and a very good set of communities, developer communities being formulated around OCEN. By the way, iSpirit has a bunch of other protocols there as well, but specifically on OCEN, scan this QR code, go there, explore and reimagine. And only the new set of platforms can reimagine embedding these OCEN protocol into. So if you are a network, if you are an aggregator network, if you're building any sort of aggregator network, you ought to be looking at OCEN and you ought to be implementing this, because this is precisely how large scale lending is going to happen through your network to your MSMEs behind it, so that they love you and they stick with you. Thank you.
Mostly for the benefit of our listeners, I think, our audience, who would sort of really find many of these ideas very novel. So let's move now to sort of the panel discussion, and really excited about this group of people here, because I think across the group we have something like 100 years of financial services experience or close to it, and those 100 years were sort of spent innovating and moving things forward, and sort of seeing many sort of change cycles go through, and deep thinking about the sector as well as sort of operational building. So maybe if you'd like to go around and introduce yourselves for the benefit of the audience, we can quickly sort of move ahead. Arundhati ma'am, would you like to start?
Thank you. I'm Arundhati Bhattacharya, currently CEO and chairperson of Salesforce India, ex-chairman of the State Bank of India.
I'm Smita Bhagat. I'm look after government institutional business for HDFC Bank. Also, as a part of my, extension of what I look after, I do e-commerce and startup banking as well. And right now also developing distribution channel in rural and semi-urban India with Common Service Centers, which is a Government of India company.
Hey everyone, I'm Siddharth, volunteer with the iSpirit Foundation, primarily working on the data empowerment and protection architecture and the overall cash flow lending efforts that have been underway.
Hello everybody, really happy to be here. My name is Rahul Malik and I look after the fintech business for Stellapps, which is a dairy tech company which is building out a fintech platform. Earlier I've been in financial services for most of my career over the last 30 years.
Okay, excellent. And I'm Kamya Chandra. I'm also a volunteer fellow at iSpirit Foundation, just to sort of moderate today's discussion. So maybe we can start off, like dive right in, maybe with Arundhati ma'am. So ma'am, your previous role was sort of as chairman of State Bank of India. You sit on numerous private sector boards as well. And so you have a very good understanding of the banking ecosystem as a whole. So, from your understanding of how, the top generals at these banks operate and think and drive value, what about, Oaken, an account aggregator, is sort of attractive to them? Like what is it that's actually pushing both public sector banks as well as private sector banks to sort of consider this to be a good opportunity from your view?
So Kavya, thank you, for, giving me such an easy question, because I don't think anybody can look at Oaken and not realize the value of what it really represents. And while I do know the financial ecosystem, having worked there for 40 long years, I'm beginning to know a little bit about the IT ecosystem also in my current role. And I think Oaken is a perfect example of how IT can actually empower people in the right way. When we started our financial inclusion program, we used to constantly tell our guys that opening a savings account is not financial inclusion. Financial inclusion means much, much more. Financial inclusion actually means when they can leverage, of all of the processes and all of the products of the entire financial system, including loans, including investments, all of that. That's when financial inclusion actually happens. It's not by just opening accounts. And I think Oaken has just made it that much easier. What I like about Oaken is that it's one of those few platforms that actually enable data to be used for the individual rather than only for the corporates. Till now, data has been the new oil, and it has been the new oil for corporates. So corporates have actually gotten hold of the data and they determine, what they will push, what they will show, how they will price. But here with Oaken, for the first time, it's the individual who's actually in charge and who's getting to use his or her data to their own advantage, because the platform that is available there And frankly speaking, again, because of my little bit of touch with IT now, I know everything is platform these days and cloud these days. These are things that you cannot avoid. And the fact of the matter is, this is one platform that connects everybody, as was shown very nicely by Pramod, how everything is connected so that, you just get onto the platform and all of your connectivity, all of the ecosystem then gets connected to you, and you can become an active player without having to do, host to host kind of connections with each and every one. Now, what that does is it reduces or brings down the threshold for who can participate. And it makes it easy for every single person, no matter how small, to be a participant. And I think, it's a great platform in the sense that it provides lenders with the ability to underwrite properly, because they are they are getting extremely rich and correct data, which can be triangulated one with the other in order to prove that this is the right thing. They don't have to go on balance sheets and profit and loss statements, which, I'm rather sad to say were often fairy tales than actual facts. So, they don't have to rely on that. They get rich, real data on which to do underwriting. So for the lenders, it's a great thing. For the borrowers, they get their money at the right price, because there are lots of lenders out there. And the lenders, they have a choice, so whoever gives them at the cheapest cost, they can go for that. So depending upon their data, they will get the right costing. And for the rest of the ecosystem players, it provides the ability to really open up with a large number of products. Okay. So I think it's a win-win right through. And I don't want to hog the whole thing. So, but it's such a lovely stuff. Means, what should I say? It's such an empowering kind of a platform. I did have to say at least this much. I think there is no way that anybody won't find it attractive.
Okay, that's heartening to hear. Maybe we can hear from Smita ma'am as a current sitting general at HDFC, leading the charge on implementing this. So how how easy or difficult was it to prioritize this implementation versus in the context of HDFC's or maybe a front-running bank's 5-year goals or 10-year goals? Like, was it very obvious that the value was clear to you? And especially coming from your sort of background, looking at rural financial inclusion, was that a hard sell internally, or sort of was it sort of quite understood and easy to move ahead?
Thanks, Kamya. I don't think so. It required a hard sell. Okay. The fact that it, 2-3 things. One, the fact that it empowers the customer to, give consent to share his data to use to his advantage, whether it is for credit, whether it is for investment or anything else, is something which is very, very, promising for, I would say, future, or for the growth, or for, increasing penetration of credit in different parts of the country. Point number 2, when 60 to 70% population stays in semi-urban and rural areas, and where the penetration of credit is just 6 to 7%, the fact that what is more exciting about this platform is that with this, you can actually double the penetration of credit in very, very short time. And the fact that you will be able to give credit in rural and semi-urban areas at a very, very fast pace, whether it is small credit, whether it is for small tenure. The fact is that if you are able to give credit, it will help people to grow. Rural India grows, economy grows. And that is very exciting for everyone. I mean, whether it is to the lenders, whether it is to any segment of Indian economy. So to that extent, I find it very exciting that the ability to make a difference in especially rural and semi-urban areas, while metro and urban also it will make difference. But to me, that scale which it can bring in rural and semi-urban areas is very promising and exciting. Yeah. So it was not a hard sell at all. And I look forward. The only challenge obviously one sees is that how do you make everyone aware of this? And this can only become a success like UPI when everybody initially was forced, but later when they all realized the advantages, everybody adopted. And I think there was, I would say there was no choice. Everybody had to do it. And similarly, I see this in next few years that people will have no choice. They will adopt it as a platform.
That's really quite unusual, though, because I think in many other countries, such sort of national platforms are quite rare, and you end up with sort of individual or walled gardens or private sort of platforms that own the data, own the flows, own the transactions. So it seems to be
India is a unique country. Every state is a country in itself. Yeah. When you travel 10 kilometers, you find language and food different. So it has to be different than other countries in the world.
Absolutely. So speaking of sort of rural and inclusion, maybe Rahul, you can tell us a little bit about the work that Stellapps has done and why you are excited about Stellapps potentially joining as an LSP on the network, and sort of what value you think you can provide in terms of like the new kinds of products that can be created with the data that Stellapps has access to.
Oh, Kamya, thank you. When I was listening to Pramod, I was saying, my God, he's like just described my last few years of life. Every piece of those challenges is what I have experienced as a microfinance lender and now in this environment. Just to give you a small brief, we have our equipment. It's all IoT-based devices, which is in the dairy value chain in 34,000 villages in India. Wow. From this, we are getting high frequency daily data of farmer milk pouring, which comes in twice a day. The milk gets poured twice a day, morning and evening. And this data is coming up into the cloud. And using this data, we are now looking to see how we can bring financial inclusion into the lives of these farmers. And with this data, one of the first things I realized with my, because I've been there, and is that we need to use this data to provide a credible way to model it and provide a credit score if we can, which will provide with lenders with some comfort. And this is all flow-based data. It is coming on a daily basis, right? So using this flow-based data, we took this whole data to Equifax. Rather than wait and try and do this all ourselves, we took the data to Equifax, and Equifax has modeled it into a score. And this score is unique to the extent that it is not a score driven by income, which is what all of us get scored on. It's only getting scored once I take credit, do I get a score? Because I am new to credit. Yeah. And most of our farmers are new to credit. This because it is taking behavioral data into account, it's taking the pouring milk data into account, and it's taking the quality and quantity of milk. So all of these various attributes are being culled together, and what we have is a scorecard which has the ability to give a score to a new to credit customer as well. So now, when I take all this, we've got all this stuff. We've got the farmer, we've got the customer. We can give her the credit, but when we have to go back and integrate with every single bank and go back and talk to every single bank on each of the, individually, that is such a challenge. So when I heard of Okin, when I think, one of the first guys who just reached out, even though Okin is MSME and we have an MSME piece that we can address as well, but I'm just stretching that completely to say that, listen, can we not do this for these farmers? We have the data, we have high frequency data, and lend and monitor is exactly what we can do. And that data can become invaluable and create so much of opportunity across. And we have the ability to score. We have about nearly 2 million farmers on our platform registered. We have the ability to score them and give them a score which can be even utilized by other people eventually. So, that Excellent. Is the kind of platform, and that is the kind of business that is available on the ground. And we are talking about sachet loans. We are talking about small ticket, high frequency. You give it to them, they pay it back in 2-3 months. And on the payment side, we haven't got the UPI ID yet, the UPI payment protocols yet implemented, because at that level, customers are still a little bit away from that. We're getting there very rapidly, as everybody has mentioned. But we'll get there. In the meantime, we are getting our payments from the day.
Sure.
So,
Excellent. And I think the powerful thing about Stellapps as well is, like you said, both the layers. So you have the dairy MSMEs, but then you also have the farmer layer. So there are many such LSPs that sort of, network aggregators who operate at multiple layers and have sort of that information. But, I want to ask Sid at this point, like, is Rahul building castles in the air? Like, how far away we're talking about banks across the country sort of adopting and coming onto the same sort of OCEN set of specifications. They have to adopt OCEN, they have to adopt account aggregator, they have to make sure UPI mandate is up and running for all of this to happen. So how far away are we from this becoming a reality? And how many banks? Give me some numbers here and some progress.
No, so it's, definitely from, if we take each of the ecosystems, so let's take the account aggregator ecosystem. What we are now seeing is the largest financial institutions have been adopters of the specifications, right? So these include on the public sector side, SBI, on the private sector side, HDFC, ICICI, Axis, IndusInd, many others, right? And all of them have worked extremely hard on rigging up their internal systems. They're just emerging out of certification. This includes, even on the taxation side, GSTN, right? And I think going into quite likely early December, early to mid-December, we would have these banks and GST going live in production. So what you're going to see is, towards the end of this year, at least over 400 million bank accounts and over 8 million MSMEs that are actively part of GSTN being empowered with the ability to consent and share their information. This includes as well the account aggregators. RBI has given 4 operational licenses. At least 2 of them should have their apps in the Play Store towards the end of this month, again, first few weeks of December. So broadly, towards the end of this year, consumers will be able to consent and fetch their banking and GST information from any of these institutions. And then now it's really a matter of the same being replicated across the smaller banks in this country and many other sectors as well, because this framework has been adopted for securities, insurance, and pension funds, right? So that's currently where the AA ecosystem stands. It's one of the largest implementations of consented data sharing as things stand in the world as well, far ahead of what EU has been doing, which is more limited in scope. On the OCEN side, which is really about, so the AA serves a bunch of use cases beyond OCEN. The account aggregators serving consented data sharing for lending, wealth management, advisory services, and beyond that as well, insurance and many others. On the OCEN side, it's really about lenders creating this vocabulary with which these two systems can talk to each other for application, offers, disbursements, repayments, and interoperate with multiple LSPs at next to zero marginal cost. On that side, again, you've got the likes of SBI, HDFC, Axis, ICICI, Bajaj Finserv, Ugro Capital. So mix of both incumbents and challengers that are live with their systems. The first LSP that goes live is Sahay Gems, which, as Pramod outlined, is essentially purchase order financing to the MSMEs that are part of the government e-marketplace, and that would scale up over a period of time to MSMEs that are part of the larger GST pool as well. Sahay Gems roughly does about the GEM system does about 3,500 crores worth of orders running through month on month. GST, you're looking at for sub 5 crore businesses, over 4.5 lakh crores worth of invoices flowing through that system, right? So as this evolves, we do expect, MSMEs being able to avail of an OCEN-like experience by about mid-December at least, right? So these are active loan transactions flowing through the system before, going into, say, the early part of next year, where you'll have Sahay GST launch. And therefore, now is really the time, for entrepreneurs in the system, especially the ones listening in, to start building out these new experiences, and I think Smita can even attest to that as they think through this internally within HDFC. But, on one end, you've got the account aggregators, and really, what does this mean? So what are the new AA experiences that can be enabled, whether that is for, a self-service user, whether it's an assisted user using it through a customer service center, whether it's an individual or an MSME, they have different front-end needs. And so we need innovators building out those apps. You need innovators building out new FIU experiences. That means, how do I consume this data to create a radically different product? Again, whether that's in lending, beyond just cash flow lending, whether that's in wealth management, securities, investments, or the insurance side. And you've got to have innovators building out the middleware. Right. So for banks to actually go ahead and leverage account aggregator as a tool, building out different middleware components, either whether that's on the prediction side of it, whether it's on the, developer tooling side of it, so that they can incorporate this very rapidly into their workflows and go live. And, now that you've got the largest FIPs on board the system, and same in the case of LSP bridges in the case of lenders, now is really the time for innovators to be filling in these gaps so that it cascades to the mass market over the coming months.
Nice. So that's super inspiring and daunting at the same time. But maybe, I don't know, maybe Smita ma'am, you can sort of tell us, now you're going to get a flood of innovators coming to your bank and saying, look, I want to design this product, I want to design that product. So how is a good bank to think about managing that innovation process? Like, is it a sandbox? Is it like, what's the sort of strategy to think about how to design the next suite of products that will work, co-design them, if you will?
Yeah, so, there is already work going on in the bank. So for example, what Sid was saying, like today, when, you are able to get customers' consent for data sharing, and the data sharing is not only financial data, because as more and more LSPs are there, the financial data combined with the other data can actually help innovate a lot of products. Now, for example, India has more than 6 crore registered traders, while non-registered, it would go more than 10 crores. Now, if a Kirana merchant is there and an FMCG company is able to give, so with the bank statement, if the FMCG company is able to say, give data that how much consumption of their product is being done by that particular Kirana store, I mean, a product can be built around those Kirana stores. It's a very, very large market. Point number 2 is that, and we all know that only 3 to 4% people in India pay taxes, while 90%, 95% of them have bank accounts. So getting a bank data, and here the other part is that obviously the penetration of data is increasing more and more, rural and semi-urban areas, while metro and urban, it is already there. So data is available, and combined with financial data, it will give rise to innovation. Bank is already working on designing products. We are doing, we call it internally Dukandar Dhamaka, which is what has been going on for last 1 year, where we have been now designing products for these small merchants. Now with common service centers, we have 14 crores farmers in India, and we don't have really that data. But as they have bank account and they are using, and we all know that in e-commerce, a large part of orders come from tier 2 to 6 cities. All this data could be leveraged to design products, and ability for, and it obviously increases banks' ability to give credit, and which we are seeing, like what eGrameen stores, what CSC has done in last 6 months during lockdown period. They have created 130,000 eGrameen stores already, and their apps are in-house apps, and which they have integrated with distributors of FMCG companies, and that gives a bank like us
data
gives
signals,
smaller loans at a much lesser cost, and obviously the processing time is also less. So opportunities are huge. ability to, design specific, design products for specific segment will exponentially increase. Ability to, give credit at a much lesser cost is also, is going to attract banks like ours to do small ticket size loans, which we never did, because obviously the cost of credit was much higher.
Not
so very
viable.
exciting opportunities. And I think next 2-3 months, as Sid was saying, Sai, GSTN would be a good experience to learn that, what more can be done in terms of innovation, in terms of designing new products for, credit and policy teams of every bank would be able to, think differently and designing products. So I look at it is very it as an exciting opportunity coming in next 2 years. And the way UPI, what UPI did to payments, I'm sure OCAN and AA would do for credit in India, and especially with a large population which does not file, who does not have structured income data. I think it would be a lot of empowerment coming in for them, and lot of growth coming in. So that is where I find very exciting and great opportunities.
Great, awesome. So interesting. So maybe Arundhati ma'am, at this point, you can help us understand what are going to be the sort of roadblocks, what are going to be the bumps that we're going to have to pass on the road before this gets done, because moving an entire ecosystem is not easy. And many of us, just evidenced by the diversity on this panel, getting everyone, from an LSP, facing farmers all the way up to, public sector banks and everything in between. What are going to be the biggest challenges in operationalizing this, and sort of how can we combat some of those?
Actually speaking, I would, Kamya, actually have to look at how the whole thing is working to come up with the roadblocks. If I'll give you a parallel example, for instance, UPI. UPI, it after it was put in place, it took quite a bit of time for banks to adopt it. And I remember specifically that both HDFC and SBI held out against, coming on board. We had good reasons for it. We didn't, for that matter, understand how the reconciliation was going to happen on a daily basis, and that facility didn't seem to be there. We also didn't know who's going to do the grievance redressal, because you can actually connect multiple banks, for sending of the money, and any of the hops, if it fails, who ultimately which is the entity that's going to address these grievances? So there was no grievance redressal mechanism. There was no reconciliation mechanism. So there were gaps in the product itself. And when we started adopting, we found those and we held back. And we said, you've got to give us the solutions for these. And then came demonetization. And then the government came down with a fiat saying nothing doing. Y'all develop whatever is required to be developed, but you jolly well adopt it. And obviously a government fiat is a government fiat, and we went ahead. And in that entire process, we did come out with the solutions as well. Okay. So the government fiat actually helped enormously in getting an UPI onboarded in the largest financial institutions. And frankly, most of these large financial institutions, they need to be on board, because most of the accounts ultimately reside in these large institutions. And if they are not onboarded, it's very difficult for the whole thing to gain traction. Once it gains traction, then of course, the many, many others that are there, they will also start joining in. So I think, the roadblocks could be several in nature. At this point of time, to exactly point out what it could be would be difficult for me, because I haven't been hands-on on this. However, it is surely, Siddharth himself pointed out that there could be number of, gaps that still need to be filled. And that has to be filled by the people who will come in between. The loan service providers, the LSPs. So they need to innovate, they need to come out. And it's not necessary that the LSP is to be a third party. It could be a bank just as well. Okay. It all depends upon what is the role that the bank wants to play. However, I think over and above all of this is the fact that India is hungering for growth. Okay. At this point of time, really speaking, there is a hunger for growth because we are not seeing the kind of growth that we need for a country of this size.
Yeah.
We need to get our GDP up there. We are looking at becoming the third largest GDP country in the world. Now,
Yeah.
none of this will be achieved unless it's an inclusive growth. Our strength lies in numbers, the numbers of our population, the numbers of the average age. So our strength is in numbers. And unless and until you can handle numbers, we are not going anywhere. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think, every single organization realizes that at the end of the day, you've got to have inclusive growth. The bottom of the pyramid must be able to access all of this in order for us to, gain traction. So basically, India is one of those few countries where the pie is going to get larger by the day. It's not that we are all scrambling for the same pie and therefore the slices are becoming thinner. No, there is a lot out there that you haven't covered. So the pie has got to become larger and everybody will be able to get a larger share of it. And therefore, because this realization is there, the spirit of competitiveness is there. And more than anything else, I think, Indians are highly, highly innovative. Highly innovative. And that's what is our strength. Because, we will drive this because of the sheer necessity of our numbers, the sheer fact that the demography demands it, it will get driven. Now, whether it gets driven in 3 months or it gets driven in 1 year, but the fact of the matter is it will happen.
Yeah.
Of course, it won't happen just like that. We've seen that with the aggregator system. The AA system has been in operation for a while. It's taken by banks time to sort of understand exactly how the whole thing is to be done. Bank processes have to be rewritten and the whole thing has to be put in place. So it will take time. And I would think, Smita said it can take anything between 3 months to 2 years. And I think she has it about right. But the fact of the matter is that these are rails. Now you've got to build the coaches that will run on the rails, right? So that building of the coaches to run on the rails, the signaling system, all of that needs to be put in place. But I'm sure, it's an exciting enough proposition for people to put their time and money and effort on this and get it going.
Nice. So sounds like what you're saying, it's difficult. It's not going to be easy. It might be a little messy. Hopefully we won't need a regulatory fiat, but because it is necessary, we'll sort of jugaad, innovate our way through it and end up with hopefully what's a world-class sort of platform and system.
Absolutely. That's what we have done earlier. You look at the other platform, you look at the UPI platform, they're all world-class platforms. No other country has stuff like this. No other country. So of course, this is going to be similar. I don't think it'll be anything different. But yes, along the way, we will have to muddle along. I don't think there is a very clearly laid out path.
I think that's very inspiring, especially for the entrepreneurs out there who are listening to this. It's often easy to wait and wait for a perfect platform before you dive in and build. But actually, what it sounds like is it's going to be a lot of creating on the way and creating on the fly.
Look at us. No, we are already got the passengers ready. We're building the coaches. And now when we look out and say, oh, there's a railroad also coming. Oh, great. So that's we're already doing it. I mean, the entrepreneurs are already doing it. It's incredible. It's just waiting to happen.
That's incredible. Incredible. So I think maybe one way, since we're coming close to time, is for everyone to go around and maybe list their favorite sort of or most inspiring product that they've thought of and sort of user or customer that they'd like to reach. I think that would sort of give a flavor to our audience of who we're talking about in terms of the users and the true beneficiaries of these sort of railroads and platforms. Maybe Rahul, I think I know your answer, but anyway, you can go first.
No, actually, see, we are working in a very select space. I mean, it's 76 million, families, farmers, dairy farmers in India. More than 85 million people are impacted by dairy farming. It is about nearly 7.5% of dairy and livestock together is nearly 7.5% of GDP. So and I don't know if people realize this, but milk actually is the single largest crop in the country. It's bigger than wheat and paddy and all that put together. So the fact of the matter is that dairy is been one of the mainstays of income for all these, for during this pandemic, for example. It is the buffer, it is that shock absorber in the agri economy that actually allows people to get daily money. And that is what it's all about. And the fact that, we can bring these people out and show their data at that granular level is available on a daily basis for organizations, the bigger organizations to actually take a call on, take a credit call on, and say that, yes, I can lend to this person and I know I can collect from this person. That is going to be the game changer. And it has to be, like, I think people have said, the cost of operations has to come down. It has to be paperless. We are struggling with that, even with the banks that we are talking to, and we are talking to a host of banks, right across the spectrum, right from the top private sector banks to public sector banks, and we have signed up with them. But these challenges are there. So that's why for us, something like Oaken and other entrepreneurs like us, something like Oaken will actually accelerate what could be otherwise 2 years. It takes about 4 to 6 months to integrate with any bank. So can you imagine the kind of time that we can save? All of what Arundhati ma'am was saying, that we need to become grow and become the third largest economy. That whole thing can be accelerated by innovations like this. Just waiting for it, actually.
Excellent. Maybe Arundhati ma'am, from your Salesforce sort of role, you sort of see a lot of businesses that you're serving today. So what are some products that sort of excite you as a potential LSP if Salesforce were to become a potential LSP? Oh, you're on mute, I think, ma'am.
So Salesforce, originally was built for the SMEs, rather than for the large enterprise. So I think, there are 60 million SMEs out there. Now, out of that, only about 7 or 8 million are more or less a little digitally mature, in the sense that they use Excel spreadsheets and emails and stuff like that. Now, what about the rest? This is the kind of product that I would like to see everybody using, because it can be done on the mobile, because, the whole thing is very swift, because, probably we can get a local language translation. So, I think there could be lots and lots of things. And it could empower all of those 60 million who otherwise are absolutely outside of our reach. Like Pramod was talking about, most of these guys, they take money on a daily basis at absolutely usurious rates. And that's the reason why they never have enough margin to grow. They just somehow manage to survive. Now, this is something where, they can get money at prices that is right for them. And therefore, at long last, begin to see an increase in their standards of living. So I think, the number of products that you can think of are actually large, very large.
Yeah.
And I would definitely think that the entire SME segment and the entire agri segment, all of those small guys who today don't have any reach to credit, or it's impossible for them, the bar has just been lowered hugely. And they are the ones who will benefit most from this.
Great. Smita, Sid, any fantasy products that you're waiting to see come to life?
See, for me, the adoption of technology, people talk all over the world about India's, adoption of technology in rural, semi-urban areas, etc. For me, leveraging this adoption of technology to reach banking products as well as credit is very exciting. And when we talk about our country, 35 to 39% is agri, and rest all is services and manufacturing. And if we are able to, build products around them, whether it is to mandis, whether it is to farmers, and with all the new reforms which government is bringing, that would be, it can't be just 1 or 2 products. For every sector, you can, innovate, build products around it. And all this can be made, easy with ability of customer to give consent to share his data. And so much data is getting collected in rural and semi-urban and urban, across the country. Supplementing bank data with, customers' other data will really enhance ability to give credit, and also ability to, whether it is investment, whether it is wealth management or anything. So the opportunities are huge. What can be done? So I wouldn't say any single product, but I would see how various segments of our economy can get benefited with adoption of this. And the other important thing is that education has got disrupted with adoption of technology. Today, in rural and semi-urban areas, I find I've come across when I'm traveling in these, rural and semi-urban areas, that how tech savvy they are. Today, they don't need to be taught how to, nobody has taught them how to buy on Amazon or Flipkart or any other this thing. They've learned on their own. And this is something which also gives confidence that as adoption of technology increases, as optic fiber network reaches panchayats and villages, you will see a different kind of growth happening.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Excellent. Interesting. So clearly there's a lot of market enthusiasm and energy from many different players in the market. I guess, my question to Sid, because he's been pre-lockdown, he was flying to Delhi sort of once a month, at least, sort of talking to regulatory bodies, Ministry of Finance and others, is what is the sort of regulator perspective on this? Like, are they excited about it? Are they nervous about the safety of lending and managing it? What have you seen in terms of the sort of regulatory view of these platforms?
Yeah, so, Kamya, it's been a long journey. It starts off way back in 2016, and it's been stewardship through multiple regulators as well as ministries and beyond. 2016 is where India put out the first national standard for electronic consent, right? So it said if companies need to empower an individual with control over their data such that they can consent and share it, it's important that we codify it, and the Ministry of IT put that out. Shortly after, driven by the Ministry of Finance, you had all the financial sector regulators come together, right? RBI, SEBI, PFRD, IRDA at the level of the FSDC, then going ahead and taking a pretty historic decision to adopt that consent framework and create this institutional layer of account aggregators around it, which, RBI has really been spearheading at the forefront of this.
It's unusual, right? For a central bank to be so proactive about something like installing a platform rails for data sharing.
I think, as long as we work on these approaches from first principles, and, it clearly solves for the problems that India is facing at country scale, over 1 billion plus with our diversity, and just complete lack of appropriate financial products reaching them beyond just banking, right? So insurance, investments, and so on. It is a must-have. And if you even go back in time, to answer your question on, what would be one financial product, I think especially from our standpoint, it's really about delivering credit to Rajni, right? And, Rajni is a vegetable vendor. She's taking an intraday loan, right? We're still not there yet. It's going to take us a few more years. MSMEs are the initial starting point. But, it required her to get an identity to open a bank account. It required her to have access to a payment system at the control of a smartphone so that she could digitally transact. Now that they have the ability to digitally transact, you can now think of a consent layer with which they're empowered to safely and securely share their data. And then, of course, a system like Okin, so that lenders can communicate and deliver their own product on top, right? So this works in phases. And, starting off in 2016, then RBI spearheading this with the institutional layer around it. It's not easy because it's not like you have a licensing model that you can replicate from other parts of the world. And, in fact, what India did by unbundling the consent manager from the custodian of the data, but also from the data consumer, and hence not going down, let's say, the European model or the Australian model, we've actually designed a system that you've got these trusted intermediaries, trusted fiduciaries and you have a much larger. You don't have to license the people on the edges, right? And that's designed for scale. Soon after 2018, Rebit publishing technical standards, common interfaces with which all institutions across these sectors could talk to each other using the account aggregator system. RBI then notifying this in 2019, right? And hence becoming the first central bank in the world for notifying technical standards. And then, of course, as we stand today, on the precipice of some of these large financial institutions going to production. A lot of this wouldn't have been possible without Arundhati ma'am actually championing this, right? The entire launch, 25th July, closed user group launch that took place. In fact, a precursor to that was actually Arundhati ma'am rounding up these bankers and essentially saying, hey, this is the way to go, right? And this goes way back in terms of UPI, as well as even the foundation of NADL, which is one of the account aggregators. So, it takes a long time and multiple stakeholders to build this up. And we are seeing immense support, but I think really now's the time for entrepreneurs to come in and start building. To answer you had a question about, is this a reality? It's been a reality for a while, right? And, it's just really about taking that urgency and saying, hey, I'll build now, I'll fill in the gaps now, I'll create value now, rather than, always waiting for something or the other to happen that gives you, and that comes from, more innate fear of failure, which I think we have to overcome together. But, that's where things stand. And we see the same even on Oaken as well. So, these things take time. We are now at the precipice of this from reaching consumers' hands. And now's the time to start building.
Now is the time to start building. I like that to close on. But thank you so much, everyone, for your time today. It was a really, I think, diverse group. I think I said it at the start, but I'll say it again. And I think it's really representative of what Oaken and AA are aiming to bring to the table, is a structured network. So thanks, everybody, and hope to reconnect soon.